Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalrin, and in today's video I'll be going over with you guys the PvE build for Outlaw Rogues. I'll be talking about the talents that you will need for PvE, your rotation, your burst, and basically how you would normally gear. The reason I'm making a PvE video as primarily a PvP channel is because PvE is probably one of the best ways of getting gear right now, be it your relics for your weapons, simply farming artifact power, maybe even a chance for a legendary, as well as general gear. Currently I'm enjoying mythics, and that's how I'm getting most of my gear, as PvP season hasn't started yet, but it will be starting Tuesday, and then I'll be able to get most of my gear from the PvP season. I'll try to be as thorough as I can with this guide in order to make it friendly for both PvE crowd and the PvP crowd. Let's get onto the video. First thing I want to talk about is my talent build. I decided to go with a talent build that fits all situations. So I'm rolling with Quick Draw, Acrobatic Strikes, Jeep Stratagem, Cheat Death, Dirty Tricks, Alacrity, and Mark for Death. Quick Draw allows me to get more combo points on pistol shot and increase damage of pistol shots, which gives validity of using the ability. Acrobatic Strikes allows me for a little bit wider cleave when I'm using Blade Fury, as well as being around the boss while being able to avoid certain ground mechanics like AoE abilities and things you should stay out of, allowing me a little bit more flexibility within fights. Deep Stratagem has great synergy with your artifact weapon, as well as that's what basically generates most of the damage that will come from your Outlaw Rogue is through finishers of using run through. One of the advantages of playing a rogue in general is the ability to stand in certain mechanics and be able to ignore certain mechanics, and Cheat Death helps you do so. In certain boss mechanics and certain fights where you need every little bit of DPS to count, you can stand in certain mechanics that would otherwise kill you, and Cheat Death would save you, allowing your healers to bring you back up. Also great talent to run if you're learning fights and you're not sure how the boss is going to react, and this ability will basically allow you to take a mechanic, learn from it, but not be too punished for it. You'll be surprised just how much you end up CCing as an Outlaw Rogue in dungeons. Not just blind, but also gouge. And Dirty Tricks allows you to use both of those abilities at no cost, allowing me to keep all my energy towards my rotation and being able to use gouge and blind at a moment's notice. Now the next one might be weird. You might be asking, why would Alacrity be really good for Outlaw Rogues? It will give you 20% haste, as you do have to stack it up, and it's a bit of a ramp up mechanic. But because of the artifact weapon that Outlaw Rogues have, it is much easier to ramp up Alacrity to 20 stacks. It has actually more damage than Killing Spree and Cannibal Barrage, and it's probably the best for both single target and AoE situations. So with Alacrity, you might just have to trust me on this one and go with it. Lastly, because of the cooldown reduction, Mark for Death ends up serving a greater purpose for Outlaw Rogues. Also, since most of our damage comes from our run-throughs, being able to get a full 6 component run-through more than once back-to-back, again without CDR, is always nice, and this is the reason why you roll Mark for Death. Some people would ask me, maybe you should roll Slice and Dice, but currently this is one of the strongest builds in the game in order to get you the most damage as an Outlaw Rogue. I can maybe do research in the future for a Slice and Dice build, but currently this is what I'm rolling with right now. Next thing I want to talk about is the stat priority, which is something we will basically never be able to talk about in terms of PvP, since stats don't translate with gear, it's all about item level. But the basics of the Outlaw Rogue stat priority is, first of all, agility, versatility, critical strike, mastery, and then haste. The way I organize the secondary stats, because versatility allows your finishers to have a little bit extra damage, which is where most of your damage comes from, is your finishers. Then critical strike in order to increase how much damage you can deal, and the more you can crit, the more damage you deal. As an Outlaw Rogue, you do get the Roll the Bones buff just for crit, so you can have a pretty high amount of crit damage. Then we have mastery, because mastery provides us a little bit of energy regen and most importantly damage. And then there's haste. Now Outlaw Rogues are not really barred by their resource mechanic. For the most part, we're able to generate energy and comp points fairly efficiently. So haste ends up being the lowest on the list. Now let's talk a little bit about the Roll the Bones mechanic. Now for the Roll the Bones mechanic. And Roll the Bones is a pretty interesting mechanic for Outlaw Rogues, and there is a lot of complexities behind it, but I want to break it down to you in the simplest way possible. If you are trying to get the most DPS out of your Outlaw Rogue, and you are trying to figure out which buffs to roll for Roll the Bones, this is the general rule. Keep rolling your buffs until you have 2 or more buffs. All the buffs are great and all of them serve different purpose, but there's no single buff that's amazing. The best way to play Outlaw Rogue is to pair 2 different buffs together. And keep rolling your buffs at 5 or 6 combo points preferably until you get 2 different buffs. And if you still don't have those buffs, keep re-rolling until you get 2 or more buffs. When you have 2 or more buffs, you actually get a lot more damage out rather than having to play around with one singular buff, and you have a pretty high chance of rolling 2 or more buffs. You have a 35% chance to roll 2 buffs, you have about a 4% chance to roll 3 buffs, and about 1.5 chance to roll all 6 buffs. So your buff roll percentage isn't all that high, but you still have a fairly decent amount of chance to roll more than 1 buff, and you should definitely keep at it until you get it. Trust me, it'll work wonders for you, and it is a little bit of RNG, so you will have to have some patience with it. Sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not, and sometimes you get back-to-back 6 buffs, which happen to me plenty often. So the general rotation I'm going to talk about is through the opening sequence, and you always want to start with stealth. If you have the hidden blade trait for your artifact weapon, then you want to open up with ambush. Otherwise, you can open with mark for death into roll the bones. So this is some of the openers you'll get. If you have the hidden blade, you'll open up with ambush, saber slash, and then you'll be able to use your free pistol shot and then roll the bones. If you don't have hidden blade, you simply open up with mark for death, roll the bones. Whatever the buffs you get, use your Curse of the Dreadblades artifact weapon and Adrenaline Rush, and then continue to use saber slash, run through, then saber slash or pistol shot, because after this your saber slash has a chance to give you a proc for a free pistol shot. So you would use saber slash, run through, or pistol shot, run through until Curse of the Dreadblades is gone. Otherwise, you would end up using saber slash whenever you can as a main common point generator. You would use your pistol shot procs depending on how many common points you have. For the most part, you want to use your finishers at 5 or 6 common points. It is not worth having to waste common points with a pistol shot, in my opinion. So let's say you have 3 common points on an enemy and you pistol shot up to 5, then you can use run through. But if you already have 5 common points on the enemy and you can't pistol shot to get 6, you'll still be wasting a common point. So it's better to use run through than pistol shot. And of course, you should be watching out for your rotation, as it will change slightly depending on roll the bones buffs that you get, but you should be able to practice those buffs against a trained dummy and learn those on your own time, as all these buffs are very different, but they're not that difficult to get behind. It just takes a little bit of practice. And for the most part, one of the main mechanics in terms of AoE situations, if you have more than one enemy on you that you are facing, turn on Blade Flurry. Blade Flurry will basically allow you to cleave damage onto 2 enemies, and Blade Flurry is never really going to be as good as it was maybe like back in Cattle, where you could literally hit 2 players or 2 enemies for the same amount of damage. Blade Flurry is probably one of still the best abilities when it comes to hitting 2 enemies in the fight, simply because you have so many resources of damage. Not only do you have crit, not only do you have all the different buffs that you get from roll the bones, not only do you have the mastery, which has a chance to hit your enemy as well. Blade Flurry basically allows you to spread your damage and get more damage at the return of the energy reduction that you're getting. Although it'll be less punishing if you do spec for the less punishing energy reduction out of Blade Flurry. Otherwise, that's basically how I play Outlaw Rogue. The rotation is fairly simple. Just build common points with pistol shot or saber slash until 5 or 6 common points, and then use run through. Keep up 2 buffs and watch out for your cooldowns, and try to line up cooldowns like Adrenaline Rush and Curse of Dreadblades together. Technically, you can use Curse of Dreadblades by itself. You would just have to pool energy before it. That means just basically don't hit your buttons and wait until you have full max energy. Then use Dreadblades and go through your saber slash run through, and then saber slash or pistol shot run through rotation. Anyway, guys, that's really it as far as I need to tell you guys in terms of an Outlaw Rogue. Some of the other things you should watch out for in terms of your energy, for example, is make sure to be always touching an enemy, because combat potency has a chance to give you 18 energy, and it is increased with your artifact weapon as you level it. So always be touching an enemy, always be attacking an enemy, and for the most part you should be able to, mainly because of the way your talents build, you actually have some range to it. And it's very simple from there. It's mostly about practicing your rotation and then just getting the feel for it. One of the things about playing Outlaw Rogue is mostly getting the feel for rotation, where you don't have to think about the next spell that you use. You just do a quick glance at your buffs that you got from Roll the Bones, and then you adjust your rotation accordingly. For the most part, I am moving around all the time, changing my position around bosses, and basically dancing around the boss enemies, trying to come up with my burst. Another thing that I can mention is if you are running Ghostly Strike by any chance, and you do prefer that talent, which is a viable talent option, basically you want to maintain it like a Revealing Strike. So wherever you had your Revealing Strike on before, you could basically throw Ghost Strike there. And your rotation still does not change. You'll still want to use your run-throughs with 5 or 6 common points, but just make sure to maintain Ghost Strike. Although your rotation will feel a little bit weird because you won't have the extra common points that you get out of your pistol shots. Last thing we have on the list are the gemming and enchants. If you are trying to gem, watch out for versatility gems. You'll either want Saber's Eye of Agility or Versatile Maelstrom Sphere. For the most part, I'd say go with the Versatile Maelstrom Sphere until raids come out. For your neck piece, you want to get Mark of the Claw. For your back piece, you want to either get Binding of Agility or Ward of Agility, whichever one is best for you or the one that you can afford. For rings, you want Bindings of Versatility or Ward of Versatility, again for whichever one you can afford. In terms of your flask, you want the Flask of the 7th Demon. And for your potions, you want the Potion of the Old War. And if you can afford it, get the Defiled Augment Rune. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully this was everything you guys need in terms of getting you started to playing your Outlaw Rogue. I think I provided all the tools that I have, and I believe I taught you guys as much as I can in terms of rotation, and how you should be stacking the stats, and how you should be using the talents properly, and the reasoning behind it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully it becomes much easier for you guys to get into maybe mythic groups, or maybe even raid groups, in order to help you farm some gear in order to be able to take the item level straight into PvP, because that's exactly what I will be doing in the future. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.